see part one, that's okay, because we're going to do a little bit of a review first. And I just want to mention a little bit about me. So just a little bit of an introduction for me. The question that I kind of come to with this work is, what is possible if communities can foster the highest growth possible individually and collectively together, which leaves no room for violence then? What if we could all then really achieve our highest potential? So that's how I kind of approach this work. And bystander intervention has been a part of my work since 2007. So I'm really into it. I think you can use it in a lot of different ways, but it is not the only thing that I do. I also have a new hobby that I can tell you all about. And if anybody else has a hobby like this, please let me know. I just picked up sewing during the pandemic, and I just am having a good time with that. So that's just a little bit about me. For today, here are some of our intentions. First, I want to review what we went over last time. And hopefully some people can remember some of the different ways that we talked about bystander intervention there. We talked about direct, distract, delegate, document, delay, all of those things. But the main thing that we're going to be doing today is talking about scenarios, because what I have learned is that people just need to come up with things that are kind of on the tip of their tongue to say, or things that they can immediately do. So we're just going to go through some scenarios, and there will be an opportunity for you to share a scenario that you'd like to review later on. And in the very last part of the program today, we'll talk about proactive strategies, and I'd like that to be a sharing session. I have some ideas about proactive strategies, but I really think that we can come up with more collectively. So practice, practice, practice. Practice is the top predictor of intervening. And what I also want to really clarify about today, which is a review from last time, is that no one can get this right all of the time. We're going to make mistakes, but the most important thing is to, once you recognize that some kind of infraction has occurred, somebody has said something intentionally or not that is not okay, that we just take some kind of action. Either it's a pause of like not acting at all, or it is really being able to say something meaningful in the moment. So that's what I really want people to take away from today, is that we're not always going to get things right, but the point is doing it more often is the biggest predictor of whether or not we will be able to intervene in the future. So I'm just going to pop through these really quick. Okay. As always, I do want to make today meaningful. So last time we did the yes and activity, and I really loved it. I thought it was really great. And I feel like today would be a great day to do another yes and activity. So just a little review for people who may not have done this before is we will do it in the chat. We will, and I'm just going to check there's a message in the chat here. I'm just going to make sure that there's, oh, that's from Anne. Okay. Just making sure that my messages are clear in the chat. So what we'll do is I will start with our prompt, which is, I got a speeding ticket yesterday. And what I want people to do in the chat is say, yes, and the officer was quite annoyed with me, or yes, and then on the way home, I fell when I got out of my car, or yes, and something. So this is just part of making today meaningful. With bystander intervention training, it's really about hearing from each other. It's about hearing other people's stories. So go ahead and just start adding your yes and to the chat just to get things started. Mm. Oh my gosh, some of these are so funny. Yes, and my mother-in-law was in the car and I was so embarrassed. Yes, and I dated the officer. These are great. Thank you all for jumping in because these these things just take a little bit of courage, right? That's why I say courage is contagious. So just to jump in and be silly and be able to just bring our full selves to this training. Yes, and it was my girlfriend's dad. That could happen. That could really happen. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and close the chat now. I really appreciate everybody for jumping in and doing that for just a few minutes. And now just another review and another how to make today meaningful moment is to think about what has happened in the month since we had our last training where we talked about bias, discrimination, prejudice, bullying, all of those things. And we all in this particular activity talked about, it was a yes no answer, and we asked, have you ever witnessed an act of bias or discrimination? And everybody said yes. So today, what I'd like you to reflect on is, in the past month, did you observe any acts of bias or discrimination? So I'll see if anybody, here we go. The chat is blowing up here. Oh, wow, a lot of yeses. I'm not gonna lie, I really thought this would be like a 50-50. Is there anyone who, actually, I can say yes to this too, come to think of it. Is there anyone who is here who can't say that they witnessed an act of bias or discrimination in the past month? If that's you, you can answer no. Wow. Okay. So as far as I can tell, then everyone here has witnessed an act of bias or discrimination. Huh. Okay. That really says something to me. The next question is a yes or no answer. In the past month, did you speak up about an incident of bias or discrimination? This is not a judgment. It's not a judgment thing. We may pull on your experiences as we do this training, but just kind of checking in. How are people doing? Has this happened? Looks like Janine says yes. Cindy says yes. Wow. This is, wow. This is really incredible. Can I, I'm going to go off script here for just a second. Is there anyone who is in this camp where they witnessed something and they said something, who would like to share their story? Is there anybody who would like to just speak up and tell us what happened? You can just unmute if you'd like to.
I can go ahead and tell a story, Betsy, if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
This is one of those, the names of the individuals have been changed because it's a very identifiable story. But as many of us were over the holiday season, I did quite a bit of traveling with my husband's family to see my husband's family who lives in California. And we were seeing very bunches of different people, had a very good time. And at one point we were sitting together with people having a good time. And one individual started spouting that what was on TV was stupid. Anybody who's watching what's on TV is stupid. This isn't funny. This isn't intellectual. This isn't this, that, and the other. And someone else in the room, another adult, said, I'm enjoying this. Why don't we continue to watch it? And the first person decided to do a like fake crying about watching what we were watching. Everyone in this story is an adult. And I had to say, not only did we spend a lot of time watching what you wanted to watch and not what she wanted to watch, but she has said she likes this, and you called her stupid in front of everybody. Why was that necessary for the purpose of viewing entertainment? We were watching the holiday shows. So that's about as specific as I'd like to be, but I tried to make it a point, and made my husband as well, who was watching the previous one of these, make a point of saying, hey, that's not okay. We don't need to put this label on someone for enjoying something. That was unnecessary and not cool. And I forget who said that in our last meeting, but shout out to whoever said, just saying, hey, that's not cool, because that was the only thing I could think to say in that moment.
Yes, that comment of "that's not cool" has come up a lot for me. So it was particularly, it was just particularly strong with "that's not cool," and I don't need to know anybody who identifies in this way for it to not be cool. So thank you so much for that, Anne. Moving right along here. Last time we talked about what is your how. This time I'd like to talk about, last time we talked about what is your why. And this time I'd like to talk about what is your how. So here is the activity then, and you do not have to participate in this if that's not something that you feel comfortable doing. Everybody always has the option to opt out. But here's what we're going to do. If you can think of a positive intervention memory, either something you witnessed or something you've done yourself, if you can condense this to a few sentences and send it to Anne via private chat, and again, avoid sharing any identifying details. This is just, again, ways of making personal connections. Like, this work is real, it's personal. We are all noticing it, and we're all dealing with it in our lives in some way, shape, or form. And so here are a couple of examples that I just kind of added for context. Recently, my friend was telling me that when she was talking to her boyfriend, she tended to make self-deprecating jokes about being a woman. And he said, we don't have to pretend that sexism is funny here. And even in just a private relationship and moment like that, that was really meaningful to her. And for me, a colleague made an off-color joke about a coworker. It was a fairly sexist joke, and I just simply didn't laugh. And that was more for me than, I made a point of not laughing, and that was pretty big for me. So let's just take a few minutes, and if you are comfortable sharing those, you can send them directly to Anne. And a few will be shared later today. So I'll just give you a moment to think those through. Okay. People can continue working on those. I'm going to move on to the next slide, which is a review for people who were here or who were a review from last time. So for people who were here last time, this is not new information. For people who are just joining us this time, it'll give you a sense of what we're talking about today. Okay, identity-based harassment. What do we even mean? This could be race, ethnicity, immigration, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, disability, mental health, age, or generation. And some things that were added by participants last time. Oh, socioeconomic status, parental status, pregnant or breastfeeding status, physical size, and political affiliation. Those are some of the topics that we could cover today. And we could cover anytime we do identity-based harassment. Then we also have to talk about barriers to intervening. If there were no barriers to intervening, there would be no need for us to do this training. But the reality is there are reasons people don't intervene every single time. And one of them that came up last time was simply exhaustion of being the person to intervene all of the time. You cannot intervene every single time you see an act of bias or discrimination. But some barriers here are being afraid of your social implications, physical implications, not knowing what to say, saying the wrong thing, maybe I didn't understand it correctly, all of those things. Your safety, physical or otherwise, you don't know what to do. If you don't know what to do, if you don't have something ready in hand, that is a barrier. It may feel like it's none of your business because it's part of our culture to say, that's none of my business. I'm just gonna leave that alone. If you feel like it won't make a difference, you probably won't intervene. And just general uncertainty of the situation, uncertainty of what to do, uncertainty of all kinds of things. But this is new information. There are certain things that have been identified as promoting opportunity or promoting the act of intervention. The first is obviously awareness of discrimination. Not everybody is going to be aware that an act of discrimination just took place. So first, promoter is awareness. The second is confidence and in your confidence level and intent to successfully intervene. And lucky for us, bystander intervention training helps with confidence and helps with your intent to successfully intervene. If you are a member of a non-marginalized group, I hope that that language is working for people. If you have a suggestion for better language, please let me know. I am open to hearing best practices there. Being a member of a non-marginalized group is really powerful because let's say it was a sexist comment that was made and I'm the person in the room and I am the one that takes action. Because I am part of that marginalized group, I can easily be seen as just a complainer by people who don't already identify with that being an act of bias or discrimination. And so it's really powerful for non-marginalized people to speak up because they're in a privileged position to act. And that was also part of the conversation we had last time. Affective empathy is a promoter for intervening. What that means is actually feeling what it must feel like for the person who is being discriminated against. If a person has a high level of feeling for other people, they're more likely to intervene. If you have a desire to educate a perpetrator, then that's going to promote intervening. And what I think is really important here is, opportunities to intervene with a stranger aren't going to come up as often as opportunities to intervene with a friend, a family member, or a coworker. And so we have to try to approach them based on coming from a place of care if we want our message to land well. So that desire to educate also just means like, hey, I care about you and I don't know if you understand that you're showing up this way. And last but not least, a promoter is bystander intervention, education, training, and programming. And here we are today. So hopefully this will help everybody along. Just a quick review of things you can do. You can disagree. Simply say, I don't hold the same views as you. Sometimes people assume that we hold the same views as they do. You can create an emergency. Some people spill water all over the floor. It interrupts the situation. If it's in a public setting, you could record the event. Lots of that is being done because we all have cell phones. Certainly you can ask a question. Like, I'm sorry, what did you mean by that? You can engage other people. I can't be the only person here that heard that. Did you hear that? And you can also check in with the person afterward. If it feels like maybe it could escalate, that maybe you don't know the level of harm that could happen, waiting until it's over and then checking in with the person who was targeted may be the safest thing to do, and making sure that they can get to a safe place. I don't mean this to stand in for if you're in a work meeting and someone makes a biased comment in that work meeting and nobody says anything at the time, but afterwards they all go up to the target and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry that that happened. I saw that that happened and that was just terrible." That actually just puts another burden on the person who was targeted. So that's I just want to make a distinction that that's not what I'm talking about there. That may not be a helpful thing to do at all. Okay, here are some things we can put in our back pocket as we gear up to practice. You can say, as a distract, "Excuse me, so and so, can you come here? Or can I ask you a question?" You can turn to a person beside you and say, "Does that person look okay to you, or does that person look scared?" You can do a really direct intervention and question the person who is making the comment. "I'm sorry, are you saying that you think this?" You could say, "You probably shouldn't be saying that. And that is inappropriate." Those are some direct things you can just have in your back pocket. I'm sure you all have great other options that you could come up with as well. Okay. I am not sure, Anne, if I have given you enough time to sort through to be able to share. Okay, so I'll hand it over to you.
Okie dokie. Let me scroll back up here. And I just want to say, as I'm reading some of these, I may omit a sentence or two for time or for clarity. And if you feel that I'm not interpreting your story as you would like it interpreted, please feel free to send me a message and correct me. So we're going to start here again. I'm not going to identify anybody, but if you would like to expand upon your story or you would like to say, "Oh, yeah, that was me," please feel free. So the first instance we have here is someone saying, "My parents were discussing reverse racism, and that being ideal to just abstain to any talks of race. I made reference to women's suffrage and how men couldn't abstain from the discussion without taking a side, and my mother was very receptive to that comment." So in this instance, it looked like somebody said, "Okay, well, this doesn't work. So here's the same situation in another light," and that helped someone see. Someone else says, "I informed a person that their comment joking about mental illness was insensitive and could negatively affect people in the group." So that one was very direct, a very, "Hey, this is not good. This is why it's not good." Next person said, "I said, ouch, and walked away from a person who was saying inappropriate things about a disabled student. And then later that person came back and apologized, and we talked about why the things that were said were not cool." Good. Going back to that phrase again, not cool, bringing in for the discussion. Excuse me. We do have, let me see here. Yeah, we have a couple more here. Somebody says, correcting language, responding to someone saying, "So you need someone to staff the event," when someone said, "We need someone to man the event." I like that one. I like that one a lot. I want to say that I am someone who is trying to adjust my language a lot, but even as a queer person, I have made that mistake and need to be corrected. So I think that is something that we can all very much appreciate.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here, just scrolling down a little bit. Okay. A friend made a comment while we were out one evening that a Black man looked like someone they saw on a TV murder mystery. I said it's not okay to think like that, and basically went on to say that it's not only certain folks who may be in those positions. So this person says, sorry, I'm just trying to read and think at the same time. I said, "Not all people of a certain category are murderers. It is not okay to think like that. And there are people of other categories that may be in similar roles on TV, and we may not want to point, or we may not point that out." So that's good. Okay, I'm going to try to read this one as is, and I believe this is the final one. But again, if you have additional stories to share, please continue to put these in the chat. These are fantastic. So this person says, at a family get together, I was playing the game of life with my younger cousins who asked if girls could marry if girls could marry girls and boys could marry boys. Some of my family are pretty outwardly conservative and have made comments in the past about girls only liking pink and so on. So I responded that you could marry whoever you loved. The game continued, and my cousins made choices for their characters to marry and have kids with hetero partners and same-sex partners. I hope that in the future they continue to get the messaging that they can like whatever color they would like and marry whoever they love and feel good in their own bodies. Yes, awesome. That's fantastic. And I think that's a great illustration using a game.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think
These
that is
are,
absolutely fantastic. Thank you everyone for sharing.
yeah, these are wonderful. And thank you, Anne, for organizing them and telling them in such a succinct and great way. Um, so we have a lot of experience in the room, and I want to just say that today is about making space to practice. And typing in the chat isn't the same as having the speaking the actual words. So if you're comfortable, today is the day we can speak the actual words. And the way that I have set it up is that I am happy to stand in as the person who is needing to be talked to. I'm happy to do that. And I am hopeful that some people will be willing volunteers. So, what I have set up for us next is to be able to bring in scenarios that you would like to practice. So, think of a situation that you'd like to practice with, whether you'd like input from the group, input from me or Anne. Think of a situation that you'd like to discuss today, and you can send it via direct message to Anne. We have a few practice scenarios that I have lined up, and then after that point, I'd like to open it up for situations that people would like to discuss and other discussions since we had such great discussion last time. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to think of a situation that you'd like to practice and send that to Anne, who can gather those. We'll probably just give it one more minute since people probably have these fairly close to the tip of their tongue, it seems like. When you're in a situation that you wish you had said something and you didn't know what to say or it wasn't effective, that tends to stick with the person. Okay, moving right along. I have picked out a first, so I'm sorry, we will bring those up at the end of the three scenarios that I have for practice. So for my first scenario, this is low hanging fruit. This is easy. this really did happen to me. And so I remember that last time people brought up that size could be a way in which people could get discriminated against. So I'm wondering if I could have a person who would be willing to say something like, bring up their audio and say something to the person who's making the derogatory comment to me, and someone who would be willing to check in with me afterward. So this was a scenario. I was hosting a birthday party for my 2-year-old, and a friend simply asked me, "Oh yeah, wasn't how big was Annalisa when she was born?" I said, "Oh, she was really little. She was just 6 pounds 6 ounces." And she said, "Oh, that's right, because we were all talking about how big you were and how little she was, and how surprising that was." And this was a person who has a history of saying mean things like this to me. So is there anybody here who is willing to like turn on their audio and speak some words that they might think they might be able to say to this person in the moment?
So are you looking for words that would be said to by the person who that comment was made to, or someone who was being intervening on behalf of that person?
Oh, intervening on behalf of that person.
Okay.
To be fair, I was shocked. I think I just didn't, I had no words to form at the moment. So,
I would give it a stab.
okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so maybe that comment is made by that person, and just saying something like if I was standing there and overheard it, and it's at a birthday party, so it's a casual occasion, assuming I would know the folks there, just be like to look at the person who made the comment and just be like, wow, well, that's kind of rude, and it doesn't even really make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so funny. That was like my first thought too. I was gonna be like, wow, that was rude.
Yeah.
To just be like very blunt, especially if it's someone that you kind of know and is, I don't know, known for saying things like that. I think that as I've gotten older, I've been a little bit more like, no, we should call that out and say exactly what it is and not tiptoe around it.
I love that you say that you said it's a person who is known for making those kinds of comments. Because if we look at this kind of a training, isn't it? I mean, sometimes people, say things out of character, but I would also say that many times when we are intervening, it's repeat offenders. So I love what you're saying. Like, no, let's call it what it is. Does anyone else want to jump in and share what they might say?
How about just something like, wow, I didn't realize size was so important to you. Is it more important than things like health?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one. Like really putting the focus back on the person making the rude comment. What about people who could check in with me afterwards, check in with the target?
If I can jump in with one, um, maybe starting by letting you know that, yeah, we heard that, and yeah, that was some BS, without you having to say, hey, my feelings were hurt. Hey, that was really not necessary. So the proactive, that was some garbage. Let's not support that.
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe making a joke like, I don't know who she was talking to back before when you guys were all saying that, but I didn't know she found people who thought like her. Just so you know, I'm not one of them.
Oh yeah, that would be great to be like, well, I don't know who's everybody, but it wasn't me or something like that. That's great. All right, thank you all for being brave and courageous with this first scenario. We can move on to the next scenario. Just for closure purposes, I did have lots of support with this, and people were like, yeah, I heard that. That was really rude. I couldn't believe she said that, etc. So there was I just thought this was a really good example of a open, kind of stranger, kind of acquaintance situation where people may not really know what to say or if they should say anything or just let it slide. Okay. The next scenario has to do with political affiliation. So think about if this is something you could respond to, but actually speaking the words. So a good-hearted, openly Republican coworker makes the comment, liberals are so stupid. Do they really think that gun laws will stop criminals? And just for your knowledge, I adapted this scenario from an article that I will share with you all after the training. So who thinks that they could say something to this, respond to this comment in the moment?
So I feel like, maybe you could come at it like something along the lines of, wow, like, I might actually be interested in having that conversation with you, except that you just called me stupid. So maybe if you could remove the insult, you could have a real conversation with someone else about the differences in opinions on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. Like, wow, I would actually love to talk to you about it, but you just called me stupid. And so, yeah, I think that's a great response. Something that is good to keep in mind with bystander intervention is keeping the behavior in the center of what you're talking about, as opposed to the character of the person. So when you really say, you insulted me, that's very different than, firing back with some kind of an insult, the same way. Obviously, I'm being Captain Obvious here for a second, but who else would like to share?
I just want to add one comment to this. I learned this in an HR training that I think it's called, please correct me, like gray rocking or something like that. So giving a short answer where you do not keep talking and it forces them to talk. So if someone were to say this to me, like, you're so stupid, do you think? Yes, I do.
Mm.
Now I'm not good at maintaining eye contact. It's easier to do that with the computer with a little green light.
Right.
But yeah, that, and again, I may have misused that term, but something like that.
Well, and to be fair, like I could have said liberals are so stupid, do they blank anything? And what we're looking for here are some things to keep in our back pocket to immediately respond to someone really saying something that is insulting an entire group of people, or that's offensive to an entire group of people, or that paints an entire group of people in a certain kind of a way. And here, the thing that I could say is, ouch, like, do you think I'm stupid? This would be a really good line for it's not cool to say that, from last time, the suggestion we got last time. Does anybody else have kind of like a knee-jerk reaction that they think could be helpful to others, or that they would find helpful themselves?
Someone in the chat mentioned that you could, if you wanted to really get a conversation going, you could maybe snap back with something, do you think, switching the roles. So
Yeah.
That comment is listed in the chat, and I can see the person say it's my knee jerk, not ideal, but same. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate. So I think that's fair.
Yes, I think that is fair, and lots of people can relate to that. And again, saying something is practice. It doesn't mean that you get it perfectly right every time, but what it means is, like, somebody says something, maybe they're a repeat offender, like I've said, and maybe every time what people do is they don't know what to do, so they sit in silence. And the message that gets sent to the person saying that thing is that they can get away with this and that a lot of people are in agreement. So yeah, maybe if you snap back with sarcasm, maybe it's not, the most perfect way to respond, but it's something. And I think that we can all grow from there.
May I
Yes.
make a comment?
Yeah.
And this is great discussion and I'm really, really enjoying it. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are. I think there's a really big difference between a random person or maybe someone at work that you're not like really close with making these kind of comments, and then somebody with whom you have a relationship that you want to maintain. I
Oh
think
my
that
God.
really muddies it. So could you maybe address responding in ways where you're not trying to destroy the relationship, but you're also trying to take a stand? Because that's harder, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I love that you bring this up, because I don't know if other people can relate, but for me, I have a history of not speaking up until I am ready to destroy that relationship. Right. And then, I'm just like, oh, well, and you just let it fly. Right. Which doesn't help anybody. Right. It's not a helpful thing to do. But let's say this is a person that you work with, you care about, and you're actually surprised to hear them say this kind of a thing. It does take gentle conversation, and I don't believe that it will be a one-off kind of a thing. If people have had experience with this, I would love for you to jump in and share. My experience with this was a coworker who was my supervisor, actually, who was older than me. And I was trying to explain to her that we, being the white women in the room, really needed to be thoughtful about putting the work on anybody in the room who was a person of color. And the way that she responded was, oh, well, I just think that, we're the ones being discriminated against, like basically brought up reverse racism. And it took quite a few conversations with her to, talk about reverse racism isn't a thing, and really try to help her bring in some empathy about what daily life experiences might be for people in this group. And look, I didn't make record-breaking progress with this coworker, but it was something. It wasn't agreeing with her. So that was something. I do see in the chat, this setting boundaries is great here. For a relationship, maybe set a boundary, like, please don't call anyone stupid around me. It's ableist and mean. I think that is wonderful. But yeah, someone that you're trying to preserve a relationship with, you might just simply say that you don't hold, I don't hold those same beliefs. That's not, you might be assuming that I do, but that's not the belief that I hold. I love that comment and I love that question. I also think it could be really difficult in a work setting. How many people are afraid to speak up because perhaps they'll be seen as sowing discord within a team, right? So is this something that, instead of being brought up directly to the person, if you feel like you can't, then is brought up with their supervisor? That's a way to intervene. It's about building a culture of inclusivity and a culture where there are consequences for saying things like that in a meeting. Okay, before I move to the next scenario, does anyone else have any questions or comments that they would like to share? Okay, always you can interrupt as needed. Okay, next scenario. A coworker makes a joke during a meeting that another coworker must be off his meds because he mixed up two different project goals. This coworker often jokes about his own ADHD diagnosis, and so he seems to think everyone is okay with this. What might you do in this situation? What might you say? Does anybody have? I know that we had a scenario like this shared in the beginning, so this is great. There may be some experience here. if it's a little bit too challenging to try to think of something that you could say, we can certainly work from the chat and expand from there.
And I remember learning about this strategy somewhere along the line where, like, again, it's about getting the other person talking some more, like Anne mentioned earlier, and maybe just coming back with, I don't get it. I don't understand what you mean by that, and throwing it back at the other person, who then is in the awkward position of having to try to explain their bad joke.
Yeah. I do like with jokes, I really do like making that person explain the joke. I think this is a difficult one. Addressing jokes is a difficult one, right? Because you could be I think the path of least resistance here is to just let it go, right? That's why we have bystander intervention training, is because most people are just like, oh, that's just so and so, let's just let it go. But honestly, in this particular situation, simply not laughing would go a long way, and is bystander intervention. It is setting the tone for the culture, right? That this is not funny. You could use ouch here. You could say, there may be, like, you could even privately talk to this person and say, I know you didn't, assume best intent, right? I know you didn't mean harm when you say this, because you joke so openly about your own diagnosis, but there may be other people in the room who are medicated for mental health issues, and this could be, I don't think you realize that this could be really hurtful to them. This may be a take the person aside kind of a thing.
I want to just mention we had somebody direct message me with a comment that I'd like to share. Basically, this person is saying, the saying is to err is human. So someone making a mistake does not mean they are on meds, off meds, or meds are involved at all. You can be making a lot of mistakes and not on medication, or you could be on medication and making no mistakes, or all of the mistakes. Point is, it is an unnecessary inclusion and a hurtful inclusion.
That is excellent. I love that. And I also think it really can kind of lend itself to proactive ways of creating a culture of bystander intervention. It's something that I see in my work often, is if somebody, says that they made a mistake. Mistakes are part of what we do, and it doesn't mean that somebody needs to be judged, right? We don't need to be judged for the mistakes that we're making. Whether you're going to add also a biased comment is another thing altogether. So thank you for that comment. I'm going to move on to the next scenario, because I want to make time for your scenarios that you'd like to talk about. This scenario is simply that during a social event, an older woman makes sexually suggestive comments to a younger Black man. What might we do in this situation? And like I've told you before, I came to this bystander intervention work through preventing sexual violence. So this would be an example of intersectionality. So there's a sexual harassment aspect of this, but also a racist aspect of this, because Black men can be sexualized in a very racist way. So I hope that we can see the discrimination there too. So any ideas on how to be a bystander and intervene in this situation?
I think like my first reaction would be to just say something like, that was weird to say, or something like that. Like, if it depends on how close your coworkers are, but like, I think sometimes making like sexual comments is not okay with your coworkers. And so just being like, oh, well, that was a weird comment or something. And then like, instead of like addressing it with that person, talking to the younger Black man later on and being like, hey, is this like something that's happening a lot? Like, are they, especially if there's a difference in like power within coworkers and stuff, that makes it a really sticky situation as well.
I agree, Stephanie. Those are really two excellent ways of responding to this in the moment, calling it weird. That's great. And then checking in with the young man later. Also, Lina says, find a way to get him out of the situation if you can. Just get him out of that space, get him away. I can only imagine how awkward and uncomfortable, that would be in a work setting.
I would,
Go ahead.
I'll say I would kind of triple down on the awkward thing by, I don't know how many people are present for this, but I'd be like, oof, I don't know how he must be feeling, but I can tell you how uncomfortable I am. You just said that, and then maybe turn to another person. Like, what about you? Are you uncomfortable that she just said that? I think we're all pretty uncomfortable now.
Yes, that is direct. It's delegating, and it's also distracting, right? You're bringing the whole people around you into it and saying like, anybody else completely weirded out by that? Like, wow, cut it out, stop it. That's great. Okay, go ahead.
Well, just a thought about that, like of saying something in the group. The only thing that passed through my head is, what if the younger Black man interpreted that as a race issue, like that someone was saying that's awkward, that's weird because of race, and that misinterpretation of a well-meaning comment could come into play. If he took it like, oh, why are they saying this is weird or awkward? Is it because of a racial difference?
Oh,
do you see where I'm coming from?
I do. You're saying that like, what if he only thinks it's weird or awkward because he happens to be a Black man?
That he thinks other people are being like, ooh, that's weird or awkward because he's Black and she's white. Like that he might take that. I mean, because it's all about how he would perceive that comment.
For sure. I think that like generally speaking, making sure that you are acting or trying to act in line with what the target is experiencing is a good rule of thumb. But yes, Janine says, I think any sexual behavior at a work event is inappropriate. Yeah, I agree. I think the focus here is that it's sexually suggestive behavior, and it's something that white men do not experience at the same rate that Black men do. So that's what I would say about that. But it's also an excellent question. So thank you. I do want to give a few moments for any practice scenarios that we all would like to discuss. So Anne, are there any that popped up to the forefront for you?
Yes, there were. Give me just a moment.
Oh, for sure.
Find those again. Okay. Okay, just want to be sure that I'm not missing any. So this person did make a point of saying that they are not able to speak to this event speak on this during this event. And we can definitely be respectful of that. But this person is giving the scenario of someone giving what they're calling fake science or anecdotal evidence or things without support as proof of their belief in the conversation to trying to bring you to their perspective. So what do you do if you have someone spouting fake science as proof of their belief to try to get you on their side?
Wow, that is a great that's a great example, and difficult to navigate, right? Because you get into like you could get into a quagmire. Jerry says, how do you know it's fake? How do you know if it's fake science? And I think it could be, if it was murky, it could be really, really difficult to sort that out. But here's the thing. is it really about fake science, or is it about kind of proselytizing, which would be in effect or inappropriate in a work setting? So if somebody is like doing that, trying to bring you into their belief system that you're not a part of, what might we say? And I can start with an example, certainly, but I also want this to be your time to practice. So does anybody want to jump in with this?
I do want to say someone sent me a direct message that said to just ask for sources. So where are you getting your information? Let me look at that. So then it becomes about the topic and not the person.
Okay.
Agreed. That's what I was gonna say. Like, you know, what study was this? Would you mind sending me, you know, the source or the study, and kind of like make it into like several conversations, maybe? Like, it's not, we're not trying to solve this right now with me saying this and you saying this. Like, okay, that's great. Like, I didn't hear about that. This is what I heard. Like, why don't we, you know, discuss the studies or something? Like, my family is very science backgroundy, so we're all like, okay, well, what was the sample size? Who conducted the study? How long ago was it? Like, to kind of be like, you know, scientists and professionals doing research and studies is a little bit different than like other people doing quote unquote studies.
You know, that is certainly a path that people go down. And I'm not saying that you don't have, or I'm not saying that you shouldn't go down it, like the really trying to pick apart their information. But I think if it's in a workplace setting, it might be more effective to just kind of like back up. And you might even say like, I'm not really sure I want to talk about this at work, or I'm not sure that we have the same beliefs, or what do people think about that? What do people think about, instead of kind of going toe to toe with, well, what's your evidence? I mean, I think asking for sources is great. I also think it could get you in a quagmire with a coworker that could be difficult. What do people think about just stepping back and saying something like, oh, is this work related? Or I don't think that, I think you think I think things I don't think, or something like that. How does that land for people? Oh, I agree to disagree. Okay, there's that one, agree to disagree.
I think it's important to know when no one's winning. You know what I mean?
Yes.
No one's coming out on top, no one's changing minds. So let's see, you know.
And I really did want to squeeze every last drop out of this training because practicing is so important. And it is 1 o'clock. So I want to just be able to kind of wrap this up. If people have questions, I'm going to drop my email in the chat here. I did hear from a few people last time, and that was great. I'm just going to drop this in the chat here. And what I can do is share some of the sources that I pulled together for this training, which were excellent and had a lot of really good scenarios and really good tips. Before I go, does anyone have, I'm just going to kind of get to the last slide here. Before I go, it's 101. Do people have any last questions? I do appreciate Stephanie in the chat saying it's particularly hard because you don't want this person to continue to discriminate against others by quoting their facts. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to toss out before we get to any brief questions. There were a couple more scenarios, and thank you for folks who had tossed those out and we weren't able to get to those. Just want to toss 2 of them out for future thought. One was a situation where a person making an inappropriate comment has much more power than the person calling them out. And another example was people making blanket statements about younger folks and backing it with quote unquote science. So the example they give is the prevalence of thesis saying people under 25 can't make big decisions because their brain isn't done cooking yet. That's not what it said, but I scrolled past.
Right.
Yes, but you understand what I'm saying. So again, I wanted to make sure that those were both noted. Oh, and there's another
Yeah.
one, a scenario of somebody misusing someone's pronouns or dead naming them
Oh,
without realizing they are doing that. So again, things for future conversation.
Yes, the power and privilege conversation is the person in power making the comment is a real issue that comes up a lot. And it's difficult to navigate. You may need to recruit help with that one. You may need more than yourself to do that. But these are really good, and I wonder if it warrants a handout for follow-up. So if people want follow-up information that I can address those scenarios that Anne mentioned, just shoot me an email. And I would love to share this information and talk further about this and keep practicing just saying something when we notice some kind of inappropriate or harassing or discriminatory behavior. With that, it is 1:03, and I don't want to hold people, but I will be here if people have more questions or want to discuss further. Okay, I can see some people are signing off, so thank you for coming. And like I said, I'll be here for a few more minutes. Okay, I wonder if
As I say, I can see that we still have some folks on here.
yeah.
So I have the power. I have the power to end the meeting. But I can also hang on. So I don't know if you want to hold on for another minute or so.
I think that if people had questions, they would have started asking. So I think that
so. I think you're
we
right.
can close it down. Yeah.
Alrighty, well then I'm gonna go ahead and end it. Awesome job, Betsy.
Thank you.
And I'll let you know what happens with that recording.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.